Hello everyone and welcome to another Procreate for Beginners video. In this video we're going to talk a little bit more about color. This video is part of a series of videos I'm doing called Procreate for Beginners, and that's just what it sounds like, Procreate for Beginners. I'm starting with the very basics here. I'm going over different topics kind of in depth now. My first video I did in the series was kind of an overview of the entire app, and I go over the interface and what all the buttons mean, pretty much. And I give an intro to some of the things, including color, which is what we're talking about today. But this video is going to take some of that information and kind of go over it again, but also take it a little deeper. So that is what we're doing today. Now, other than the intro video, I have done a few more of these deep dives before this video, and I'm going to be doing a few, well, more than a few, probably more like a bunch more after this. So depending on when you're watching this, they may all be done already. But if you're watching this as it's new, there's going to be more coming. And all of those videos are going to be in a playlist on my channel called Procreate in Digital Art. And that I will have linked in the description. I will also have a link for it after the video, at the end of the video. And I will put it in the cards. You'll see a link for it right about now on the screen, depending on what device you're using. And after all these deep dives are done on different topics, we're going to start doing some projects or exercises together that are more practical and show you how these things all work together. And I know it's kind of hard when you're just dealing with one thing at a time. It's hard to remember things. As soon as we start doing more exercises, it'll get easier, I promise. So those are coming soon. And again, depending on when you're watching this, they may already be done and they're in the same playlist. So again, I will link that in this video. Okay, let's get started with color. Okay, so I opened up a new canvas. It's an RGB profile canvas. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I did talk about this in the intro video. I will give a little bit more of an explanation later on in the video, but most of the stuff I'm going to be showing in RGB, so I'm going to do all that first, and then we'll talk a little bit more about CMYK, which is the other version. Okay, and again, some of this will be a little bit of a rehash of what I've already talked about in my intro video, so bear with me if you've seen that. But we're going to go over everything, and again, we're going to go a little bit more in depth. So first thing is, so this over here is where you're going to pick your color, and this, whatever color is here in the circle, is the one that's going to show up on your canvas. So, you see. Now, if you hit this, this is technically called the color panel, and there's lots of things to do here. First of all, you see this color and this color are the same. This is technically where you pick your primary color. Whatever color you end up putting there is going to be the color that shows up here. This other color here next to it is the secondary color. That's something that's a little more complicated, and we're going to talk about when we talk about making our own brushes, because sometimes you can change like a brush and how the colors come out on the brush depending on how much pressure you put in or how fast you go. We're going to talk about that in a different video. You don't really need to know much about that. The only thing you could use it for if you're not making your own brushes is you could pick, like there's another color here where you could quickly pick it. So if you just went here, you know, you could switch them back and forth, whichever one you want to use. It's up to you if you want to use it that way. But that is something you can do. But just know that this one is the one, your primary color is the one that's going to show up in the color active color up here thing, and that's whatever is going to be put on the canvas. Now, so next thing I want to show you is, you see down here there's 5 different options. There's disc, classic, harmony, value, and palettes. Disc, this is what we're selected on right now, is disc, and you can see this is kind of a disc. If you move this around, this is going to give you a different hue of color. So that's like the basic color, like there's red, purple, blue, a lighter blue, green, a lighter green, yellow, orange. You know, you go around the circle and you pick like the base color that you want. And then in here, you're going to go change the saturation and the brightness. So when you go up and down, see this is brightness here because it's more white, and then down here is more dark. And then if you go left to right is saturation. So that's how you're going to change everything on this color wheel. And I usually use this when I'm picking a color most of the time because you can see more colors easily. You can kind of try to pick around the one that you want in the wheel. If you go below this history here, this isn't available on every iPad. It's only the bigger ones, and I don't know like which ones have it and which ones don't. Like I said before in the intro video, my iPad I used to have, which I don't even remember exactly what kind that was. I'd have to look it up. But that one was smaller, and I didn't have this history thing on here. But I have the 12.9 iPad Pro. So, it's one of the bigger ones. I think it might be the biggest. But now I have this history thing in here. So basically it's what it sounds like. This is the history of the colors you've used. So now we pick this red one, you see? And now if we were to use this and then we come back, that's going to be in our history. Now obviously this clear is if you want to clear your history, you can do that. And this down here, we're going to talk about this when we get to palettes, but this is your default palette that you have set. So this is just the one that I have set right now. This is the color I was using before. And I'm just going to select that again right now. But that is basically all you need to know about the disc. Now let's go to Classic. Now this is a different way that you can choose the color. And you can either pick it up here like this, or you can play around with these little sliders down here. So the one that you have to play around with is the hue again. This is the hue. So again, you come from red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, back to red. And because you can't really change on here like what the hue is, you have to change that here. But everything else, like this, again, brightness is white to black, and then this is saturation, left to right. And you see that middle slider is moving. That's saturation, and then up and down is brightness, white to black. Trying to pick the perfect shade, you might want to try to use this instead. And you see the history, and your palette, your default palette, is still here on this screen as well. So I'm going to skip over harmony for a second. We're going to go to value next. So this is another way of doing this. So again, this is the hue, so sometimes the pencil doesn't grab it quite right, so I use my finger. But again, you have to kind of slide it back and forth to find what hue you want, and then the saturation level, and then the brightness level. And then down here is where your color profile comes from. So it's RGB. So again, I'll go over this a little more later, but this stands for red, green, and blue. And that is, the RGB profile is for anything that's sort of digital and will show up on a screen, because that's the way that a screen picks the colors that are in something to be able to show it, if that makes sense. Whereas the other version is CMYK, and that's where you get something that's printed, because everything, like if you're printing something, you'll notice that most printers have cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. K stands for black. And that's how they, every color that way is picked from a certain percentage of, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Whereas this is, every color is a certain amount or percentage of red, green, and blue for a screen. So when we do go later and change the color profile, you'll see this is going to have CMYK instead of RGB. So that's what that's all about. And again, you can adjust everything, like right here. If you want to just play around with it, maybe find the perfect color that way, you can do that. This hexadecimal thing is basically a way to save a certain color. Like obviously you're going to save it in your palettes, and we're going to get to that, but say you need the same color that you're using in Procreate in a different program that uses the same kind of thing. Canva is something that you can use this hexadecimal thing in. I can tell you that's the way I've used it, but also like if I wanted to There's another way to do this, but if, let's say if I was teaching something and I wanted you to have a certain color, I could tell you, okay, go to your hexadecimal in value and then just type in the number that you need, because you can just click on it and type in the letters and number that you need. It's a 6-digit with letters and numbers code. Every color has one. That's another thing you could use it for, although you can also share palettes, which is another thing that you can do. And I might do when I start teaching projects, we'll see. But that is that. So what do I want to do next? All right, let's go to harmony. So this is, you see this is the color that, through all that mixing up that we selected. The bigger circle is the one that is currently selected. And you can move that around, and you see that the smaller circle moves around too, because you're under the complementary color, so it's basically opposite on the color wheel. So you see we got kind of an orangey color here, and then opposite that is like a bluer color. And you also have brightness here, so you can make it like a more muted color, or more bright. But anyway, this is to find complementary colors. So, you know, that's something when you're working on a design, you know, those colors are going to go together because they're complementary. So if you're looking for things that, you know, match and go together. Now, if you come over here and click where it says complementary, there's a couple different options. Now there's split complementary, which is not exactly opposite you. It's, or the color you have, it's the one like right next to, on either side of the one that's complementary to you. And again, those are still kind of, you know, they go together in a different way, but they're still complementary. And then analogous is kind of the opposite, where it's right next to the one that you have selected. So these all are, it's not exactly monochrome, but it's kind of close to it. Like monochrome would be all the same color, or all the same color in different brightnesses. Like these are very, very similar. Like they go together that way, where they're very, very similar. So if you wanted to do something that was closer to monochrome, but not quite, you could do that. So then another one is triadic. So this is one that's going to go like, you know, 3 points across the color circle or color wheel. So you see you have RGB. That's because it's what it's based on, you know. And, you know, these colors are all, again, still complementary to each other. They look nice together. So, you know, they go together better. And again, you can still change the brightness and stuff. And then the last one is, I'm not sure exactly how to say that, tetradic, probably. So that's 4 points across the wheel. And first of all, you get more colors with that, but also they still all kind of go together when you're, you know, taking things around and moving them in and out, and brightness and stuff. So that's if you're really looking for, like maybe you found a color that you really like, but you're looking for something that goes with it. You can find different ones that'll go with it with this. So I'm going to put this back on complementary. And I'm going to come back to this in a second, because we're going to talk about something with palettes for a minute. So palettes, you see I have a few here. I think Procreate comes with a few. These are ones that I found online. And then there's a few that I kind of made myself. You can see these are more put together and professional than mine. But you can see there's all different, you know, kinds that I've acquired. People sell palettes as well, so you can buy them if you want. And some of them, like, I plan on doing this eventually. Like, I plan on having like certain tutorials that I'm going to have as a kind of a package with the palette and a worksheet and stuff all together. And you can put that's something you can do. You can put this all together, and you can share it all So but anyway, so there's plenty of things you can talk about here. Okay, one thing to note here is there's compact and cards. So this is compact. You see that? Let me show you the basic difference. Cards is much bigger. Compact is compact. I tend to keep it on compact. And I'm going to go over more things you can do with this, but I'm going to go to cards real quick. So you go into cards, you still have all of the same palettes in here, but they're much bigger. They take up a lot more space. This is the one we were on, C. So something you can do if you want, they kind of give you an approximation of the color that it is. You can change the name if you want. Like if you wanted to say that this was like a deep sea blue, let's say. You could change the name, like whatever you call that color, you can change it to. And that does come in helpful too, because sometimes like these two are both cyan according to the thing, and these were both dark cyan blue before I changed it, and these are both blue green and these are green. So like if you wanted to distinguish between which color is which, you could change the name. That is something you can do with cards. Okay, going back to compact. So there it is. This little blue check mark, if I didn't say anything about this before, I don't think I did. This shows you which palette you have selected at the time. So in order to select another palette, you have to actually kind of either go to these little dots here and say set as default, or you could pick a color in that palette. So like doing this, that'll select it as well. Other options you have in here are you can duplicate the palette if you wanted to. You can share it, like I said before. So if you wanted to, like this is the palette I used on this project, I want someone else to be able to do it, you could share it with them. Or if you wanted to share it through devices or whatever, you could do that. You can also delete it if you want, like you don't want to use it anymore, it's full of random colors and you'd rather just start over, you can delete it. So those are the options you have there. Now if you want to make your own palette, anytime you see a plus, again, is basically means new. So you can create a new palette. Now you have a couple different options. You can just create one and it'll start with a blank one. Oh, there it is, untitled. So one thing you can do is you can title it. So if you click on the name, you can just title it whatever you want. And then you can go, you see that this is the default one now. So if you would go to your disk, you see untitled is here. So you can start adding things to it, and you can use any of these other ones to add things to it. You can also take things from different palettes and kind of move them over as well. But I'll show you, picking a few colors. Let's see, I really like that green. Let's put that in there. And then let's see, how about this red here? That reddish brown. And then, blue. And then, like if you were to do it over here, again, you can pick the hue that you want, the brightness, or the saturation and the brightness. There you go. And then again, you can pick the complementary colors if you want. So let's say you want this red, and then you can click on the complementary circle over there, and you see it selected it. And you can put that there, and then you can do, those go together, and probably put them back there. And you can do that with any of those that I showed you. And then value, you can do the same thing. You can pick something like that. So you just click on a square and it will add it to your palette. Now let's go back to the palette. Now you can do this when it's default too. You can do this anytime you see a palette. You can do any of this, but I just went back to palettes. So a couple things you can do. So you can, if you take your current color here, this purple that I put here, you can actually replace it with one of these. So you can do this, and you see it says delete, or you can set current color. So you can do that if you want to. For whatever reason, maybe you're picking one from a different palette and you want to put it over here. And you didn't mean to, and I do this all the time. Like I'm picking a color and I'm like, I start clicking it all. I'm like, oh, I didn't want that there. So you can delete. And you could also replace it with a different color. So that's something you can do. There are a couple more things here you can do. So new from camera is you could take a picture of something with your camera on your iPad, and it'll take a bunch of colors from that picture and make it into a palette. So I can't really show you that right now. Well, I mean, I don't really have anything to take a picture of here. Let's see. I mean, it'll take a picture of the table. But let's see. Let's see what kind of colors it picks up. See all the browns. And I actually visual indexed. But you can take a picture and it'll give you a color palette of the table. Because that's all I can show you right now. But anyway, I don't want all these browns. I'm going to delete this. That's how you delete a palette. But you can also do new from file, so you can upload something, a picture, new from photo or file. So it could be like a PDF that's on your device or a photo that's on your device. You can do that and you can pick a color, a picture, and then it'll show you, it'll pick a bunch of colors from that picture. So let me see if I have anything useful here. I just made a king cake the other day. Took a bunch of pictures. And this is all the colors I got from there, even though there was some purple in there. It didn't seem to get that, but you know, it gives you an idea of what you can do. So, but you can also kind of do this a different way. I'm going to show you in a minute. All right, I'm just going to show you kind of a trick that you can do. So you can take, if you hold down a swatch and take it into your painting over here, you can actually color drop. We're going to talk more about this in a minute because you can do this other ways too. But you can color drop it in to your painting. And it's kind of hard to do right now. But that is something that is possible that you can do. You can also do that from here. We're going to talk about that in a minute, probably next. So, but you can drag one of your swatches here from the palette right into your artwork. Okay, another thing you can do if you wanted to, you can move palettes around. So you kind of tap and hold here at the top, and you'll see it kind of grab it. You can move it up and down and then just let go. Another neat thing you can do here on the disc is once you find the hue that you want, you can make this bigger so you can kind of get a little more control over what's going on, and then you can just pinch it to go back. One more thing with the disc. Let's clear this out. One more thing with the disc again. So let's say we're picking this blue for a hue. So you can do like a double tap at different points on this circle. That will give you like the perfect color, the perfect value, I guess, of the color. So let me show you what I mean. So you see that it's white over here. If you click white, it'll give you perfect white. Now if you click here, it'll give you the perfect saturation of that blue. And 100% saturated, 100% bright. And then if you click here, it'll give you the perfect, black color. So that would be 0% of both saturation and darkness, and then this would be 100% brightness, but 0% saturation. And then you can also do that in the ones in the middle there. So this is middle between blue and black, and middle between white and blue, and middle between white and black. So you can do that at those points on the circle. If you double tap, it'll take you to the nearest one. So I use this a lot when I'm trying to get white and black. So it'll give you like the perfect white and black, like pure white and pure black. So that is something you can do with the disc as well. And then going back to value real quick. So setting your saturation all the way down and your brightness all the way down will give you black. And then your saturation all the way down and your brightness all the way up will give you white. This is actually not quite 0. You can also click on any of these to change the number. But you see also that down here when we did that, RGB is completely this way, it's 255. So when I go back and do black, they're all 0. So that also means it's black, and you see the hexadecimal is all 0 here. And when it's white, they're all Fs. Alright, so then going back to the interface here, now I showed you how to drag a palette color, a swatch from the palette color into your artwork. You can also do that with this up here, which is your active color. You can just pick it up, you can pick it up, hold it down, and drag it in. And it's going to fill, right now, the entire screen, because that's what's here. But you could also do it when you already have something on the screen. You could fill something in. So let me show you what I mean. So let's say you have this triangle, and you want to fill it in. Now, if you keep it hold down, you can see there's threshold here. You can slide things to the left to change the threshold, although it's not really changing much. And let me do that again. Let me do something a little more imperfect. Now, let's say you wanted to fill that triangle in, but you had kind of a mess up there where it wasn't completely closed. You can actually change the threshold a little bit so that it doesn't fill the entire thing because it wasn't closed. And then you can kind of adjust and be like, oh, I meant to close that. Here we go. So that's something you can do with the threshold. All right, so another thing you can do is when you have this open, you can kind of grab this top part of the screen and you can just bring this out on your artwork. So you can kind of do this while you're working, and you don't have to keep going back in. And just to, you can go through all of these again too, all the things you have here, and it'll show your current palette. But if you want to go and put this back and you want to make a little more changes, you can do that. You can just hit this X here and it'll just go back, and then you can, if you want to pick a different palette or whatever, you can do that. So that is something you can do. And again, you can have your palette here while you're working. These are all the colors you want to use, let's say. And you can just change it very easily that way. And you can move it around wherever you need it. And then just get rid of it when you're done. And it'll go back to where it is. Nothing gets messed up or changed. So one more thing you can do here. I just made a few more marks. You can hold this down and it'll go to your previous color. So you see we were on that, and that was the previous color we used. So if you want to switch quickly between what you just used before, you can just hold this down. Okay, and again, I kind of went over this in my intro video, but we're going to talk a little bit about the eyedropper. So this little square here, this default is your eyedropper. And you see this thing came up. You can change that in preferences if you want within the settings. So you'd go to the wrench and then to prefs and then gesture controls. And there's a, why don't I just do it? Prefs, gesture controls, there is a selection for eyedropper. So you can change it if you want to different things. I'm going to leave it alone. And And there's a couple different ways that I have set up where you can do it. And I think that was the default setup. So one of them is if you click this with your finger, it'll show up, and anywhere you drag this, it will show, you know, what color that is right there in the middle, the little plus sign in the middle. It will pick up whatever color it's above at the top there, and once you let go, it's going to change it to that color. Now there are a couple different ways you can bring that up. Again, you can change this in gesture controls if you want, but you can also kind of press and hold, and it'll also do that. It'll come up with the eyedropper again, and you can move it around with your finger, and then it'll change your color. I do that accidentally sometimes, which bothers me, which if you saw in the gesture controls video, I actually changed it so it was a little longer so it wouldn't happen as often. And it's helped out since then. I'm glad I did that. So another thing you can do is use both fingers, one of them on that little square button, and then one of them to move this around. And again, like, you can kind of, you see that top half of that circle is changing to whatever is selected, and then if you let go, it'll give you that color. So again, there's a couple ways to do it. So I told you I was going to tell you about CMYK as well. So this again was RGB that I opened up. So I'm going to go back to the gallery. So hitting this plus in the right hand corner is how you get a new canvas, and then hitting this little rectangle with a plus here inside the right next to new canvas will let you create one. Now again, if you go to, I'm not going to worry about the size right now. If you go to color profile, you can choose between RGB and CMYK. So that last one's RGB, and there's a couple different options here. I actually don't know much about the difference between all of these. I usually pick either this one or the next one down. Again, I don't really know what the difference is. And here for CMYK, I usually pick the generic CMYK because again, I don't know the difference. I've never had a problem with using this with what I do. So, I mean, there may be a reason to use these. I don't know though. But we're going to pick this generic one just for now. I'm going to say create. And then it's a different size canvas because I didn't change that, but I'll just show you how the colors are different. So you see they're kind of a little more muted. But you get a different kind of range of colors here. So these are your hues that you have, and then this is your brightness and saturation again. And then if you go to classic, it's the same thing. You got the hues, saturation, brightness, and harmony you can see is a little different. Let's turn the brightness up a little, maybe not that much. And the colors are a little different. So I mean, the color wheel is basically the same. It's just that the hues are a little different. So, but anyway, done playing around with that. Then you see in values now, well, there's RGB as well, but you have CMYK now. So, again, if you were to take this saturation all the way down and this brightness all the way up, that would give you yellow. So these are all 0. I mean, that would give you white. These are all 0. And, oops, I don't know why it does that. Take this all the way down, that would give you black, and these are, not exactly perfect. And you have to scroll down to get your hexadecimal. But these are all 0. But they're all around the same. And actually, to get like true black, you have to take this to 100%. And that's why I kind of defaulted to 1% when I had it that other time, is because this is actually more black than having this down here. So if you want, like, if it matters, if you want like the actual, like, blackest of the black color, you would have to have that at 1% and this at 100. But, you know, that's basically the difference. And again, the difference is you would use this to, if you're going to export it to print something. So that's why you'd use CMYK. Otherwise, if you're doing something digitally, like it's going to show up on social media or a website or something like that, or email or whatever, you would use RGB. So that is the difference between all of that. Now, I'm not going to go over this today, but I can tell you that when we get to the adjustments menu, which is this, there's a couple different ways you can change color in here as well, but that's more complicated and we're going to get to that. So I'm going to leave that alone for this video. And we're also going to talk about more about importing and exporting things in a different video later on. So I kind of glossed over that in this video and a few other ones. We're going to talk about that in a different video. All right, and just to show you again that there is more to come, this is an extensive list. As you see, there's etc. at the bottom. I am still working out kind of different groups of what I want to work on, but some things you have to look forward to are selections, layers and masks, brush studio, which is where you can go and make your own brushes, or you can customize brushes that are already made. The adjustments menu, which we did go over a little bit in this video. Well, I showed you the adjustment menu. I didn't go over anything in it, but that's where I mentioned you can kind of change the color a little bit after you make something, and we'll talk about that. And then there's also animations that you can do with Procreate. Nothing, you know, super fancy, but you can do some animations on Procreate, so I will be showing you how you can do that. And again, there's other stuff that is kind of miscellaneous that I'm trying to figure out exactly what's going to go with what. So, but we have a couple more of these videos to go through about different things, different topics. And again, we're going to be doing some projects or exercises or whatever, something or something like that, to kind of go over some of these concepts and how you use them together. So we're kind of doing it separately right now. We're going to do them together in like a project or an exercise. So those are coming on the channel as well, and they're coming soon. So those of you who have subscribed, thank you very much. It helps out my channel a lot. I've been able to unlock certain things now because I've got more subscribers. And again, there is a lot more videos to come, both about the Procreate app, and I've got other tutorials coming up, and I do normally Wednesday videos that I have planned that are like actual tutorials of everything else I do, which sometimes Procreate is part of those. So if you want to watch those as well, that'd be great. But if you're just here for Procreate, that's fine too. I do have many more Procreate videos coming, so this is a good place for you if you've enjoyed any of these videos. So I will see you in the next one. Bye.